You ever wondered why Canadians as a whole, the population, are so low IQ? I've talked about this quite a few times, but I find it just fascinating how stupid the mass swath of the Canadian population is. You look down in the States, down in the United States, and again, I played 4 years of professional hockey. I lived in multiple places throughout the States. The US was friendlier, it was safer, they were kinder, and my quality of life from 2022 up until 2024 dramatically better than my quality of life in Canada. And it's interesting because Canadians have always made fun of Americans. Oh, they're dumb. They don't know what they're talking about. They're so stupid. Well, if you look at what has happened in Canada, and let's back this up for a second. I want to go to 2018, 2019. Canadians, we want more, we want a bigger minimum wage. Minimum wage people need to get paid more. Well, the problem with the minimum wage going up is that the corporations could definitely afford it, but the bottom level companies can't. That's how you bankrupt small and medium-sized businesses. But so in Ontario, our biggest province here in Canada, they jacked the minimum wage up from $15 an hour to $18 an hour back in 2019. And Tim Hortons immediately started laying off full-time employees and cutting benefits, and we can't afford this. And you think about it in the grand scheme of things, you basically had a 20% increase in your labor. And if I don't know what the exact numbers are, but let's say they're spending, I don't know, $200 million a year on labor. Now you're spending, do some math in my head, $250 million in labor. Doesn't look good for the shareholders or for the profits. So they started cutting the benefits. They started cutting staff. Everybody's going part-time, so you're not going to get the full-time benefits. And then enter in the scamdemic of 2020. Now, watch this. We have a massive labor shortage. We need more labor. You never heard the words high-skilled labor. We have a labor shortage. I'd argue it's the corporations telling the politicians, we're tired of paying Canadians, Canadian wages. Those stupid Canadians have such high expectations. They want their pension, they want their benefits, they want their dental. They only want to work 8 hours and they complain about standards. Well, why don't we import the third world? Why don't we do a program to subsidize that? Interesting. So the temporary foreign worker program, where massive corporations like Tim Hortons, Walmart, Home Depot, Canadian Tire, McDonald's, A&W, they can hire these temporary foreign workers for half of the wage. So instead of paying $18 an hour, they pay $9. The government subsidizes the other $9 because we need labor. We have a labor shortage. Well, the government paying that $9 is you paying that $9 an hour because the government does not produce anything. It only takes and redistributes, which today they don't even redistribute. They just take and then they steal. But so I've heard so many people in Generation X, and for the record, I'm just in the millennial age range. I've talked about it before. I never thought I was a millennial. I found out I was a little bit chapped. But anyway, I hear Generation X people talk all the time about how young Canadians are lazy. They don't want to work. They think they're better than working minimum wage jobs. I saw a stat the other day. There was youth in Canada under 25 have like a 30% unemployment rate between like 18 and 25. And I thought, well, I'm going to say it. I can't remember the last time I saw a real Canadian-looking person, a white Canadian, a historical Canadian, working at a major corporation. And if I was to put myself in the shoes of the corporation, why would I pay you $18 an hour with benefits, with perks, and your attitude and expectations when I can hire the temporary foreign workers for half the cost, right? If I'm a business owner and I'm an entrepreneur and I'm barely getting by, I'm sorry, I'm going to hire the temporary foreign workers. It's just business. Right? These businesses don't have a Blue Cross above their door, or they're not a non-for-profit. They're here to make money. And so this is where it comes back to why I find Canadians are just so stupid and genuinely the lowest IQ population on earth. I know Somalis have been designated the lowest IQ population on earth. I'd argue they're number 2. Canadians actually take the taco for number 1. And reason being, Canadians are very aware that we are being replaced. They are very aware that immigrants from the third world are being dumped into the streets off the boat, or off the plane, I suppose, and civil unrest and chaos is coming throughout the streets and throughout society. Canada does not look like Canada anymore. And at the end of the day, I'm sorry, the elections are fake. The elections are rigged, and if you think the last election was real and was not rigged, you are out to lunch and you're beyond saving. The only way to vote your way out is to vote with your money and vote with your dollars. Because at the end of the day, these corporations need your money. And so when all of you people complain, oh my God, Canada doesn't look like Canada anymore. It's being taken over by immigrants. It's being taken over by the third world. But the lineup to Tim Hortons is still around the corner. There's still 30 of you every single morning waiting for your double-double, which is dog shit coffee, and your breakfast sandwich, supporting exactly that. If you did not go to Tim Hortons or the big corporations, they would have no business and they'd have to reevaluate. And I'll give you the perfect example. Tim Hortons, as Sing Hortons, as they've started calling it. I heard somebody call it the Taj Mahortons the other day, which I thought was so funny. But Tim Hortons, they have brought back a retro menu of donuts. They brought back the 1990s donuts. They brought back a classic menu. They brought back the old cups. These guys were so desperate to turn around business and try to increase profits. They brought the cups back from the early 2000s. You know what they didn't bring back? The old employees. I miss going to Tim Hortons back in the day when you have like an old granny. She was in her 60s or 70s, and she'd serve you with a smile on her face. I remember I was doing a bit of a road trip. I took the train from Halifax to Montreal back in the fall. Got a rental car. I had to drive from Montreal to Fort Wayne, Indiana. I was going to ride a steam train, a really cool steam train. And I stopped in Kingston, Ontario at the A&W because I was curious. Maybe they had chicken fingers or whatever, just a little road trip snack. And I walked in, and maybe people of Kingston know what I'm talking about. The entire staff was Canadian people. It was just all old white ladies, old white grannies working in the A&W. I said, you know what? I'll buy 2 5-packs. I was going to buy 1 5-pack of chicken fingers. I'll buy 10. I will support you guys. Thank you that I got to do my business with Canadian people. But when the Canadian population that complains about this stuff, they just go to Tim Hortons and give them their money, give them their business. Like, you are the problem. You are your own worst enemy. Again, this is why Canadians are just so stupid. Such a low IQ population, right? I should probably be careful what I say about the whole election process, because there is no democracy. It doesn't matter if you put Mark Carney in, doesn't matter if you put Pierre Poilievre in. It's all slave-minded, liberal, conservative. They just want you fighting from the distraction of what actually is going on. I mean, one could argue logically we don't know what Pierre Poilievre would do because he's never been prime minister, which is true. It is logical. I know most people are emotional these days, but logically that is true. We do not know what he's going to do. But even Pierre Poilievre is way too liberal for the actual solution. I've noticed him going slightly more and more and more liberal as he's gone on. He was very conservative when he won the leadership in 22. And since then, he's gone much more liberal. And it's true, you have to become more liberal to win the country and conservative to win the base. But the solution is still not going to solve the problem. It's way too liberal. You would basically have to have a king come in, drop the hammer, who would be, it's funny, probably 10 times more authoritarian than Trump is, which God forbid Canadians acknowledge that Trump ever did anything positive. I'm not the biggest fan of him personally, but he has done some good things. And that is what it would take to save the country. But it'll never happen. The voting base is too stupid. The country is too liberal. If you removed Alberta and Alberta left the country, which will never happen, by the way, I'll do a future video on that. If Alberta left, you would never, ever have another conservative, any government outside of the Liberals ever again. All the conservative MPs would lose their job. You cannot. Stephen Harper would not have won any of the 2 elections that he won in 2006 and 2011 if it was not for Alberta. If Alberta did not go blue, it would have been, who was he fighting? Was it Paul Martin at the time? Paul Martin, and then Michael Ignatieff, I think, in 2011. And then JT rises from the ashes and gets a nice 10-year reign. Now he's dating Katy Perry. But I'm curious, what do you think? Are Canadians stupid, as I'm telling you they are? I mean, as firsthand experience, I do think they are. I was chatting with a girl at the gym. This is a couple months ago. She must have been 22, 23. And she was cute. And we ended up, I can't remember how the conversation came up, but ended up chatting a little bit about politics. And she said to me, she's like, I just find it so frustrating. Our politicians, they don't know what they're doing. They're not experienced enough. They're so silly. They don't realize the effects of their actions. And I said, sweetheart, I wish I could have my head in the sand the way that you do. They know exactly what they're doing. They are not in that position if they haven't been vetted, probably compromised to some degree, and they know what they're doing. They know exactly what they're doing. You know what? I got to give Justin Trudeau credit. He, outside of the fact that, yes, you take 70% of my money to taxes in Canada, I do appreciate being able to go to the dentist and get a tartar scaling once a year. It is nice. But he played the role great for 10 years, right? He was able to convince the young people that empathy and softness was the way. The old people love him. My grandmother, who is 90, what was she? She would be 92. Sorry, 93. Excuse me. Even last election in April, I'm probably going to vote Liberal. I've always voted Liberal. Trudeau's he's not here anymore. Also, you can't afford to live off your pension and your OAS and your Social Security. Maybe it's time to change things up. But the Conservatives are scary. Canadians are stupid. Canadians are the stupidest, lowest IQ population on planet Earth. What do you think? Leave a comment below. And if you like this video, hit the subscribe button because I will do many more political talks like this. As always, curious to hear what you got to say in the comment section below. And I will see you soon.